There's a simple truth: the world is slowly waking up to India, is not just rising, it has arrived. For decades, analysts described India as a potential superpower, a nation of promise that somehow never fulfilled it. But today, that language sounds outdated. Because India is no longer a story of potential, it's a story of performance, persistence, and power. Let's be clear, no nation's rise is inevitable. Yet, India's ascent stands apart because it is built on three foundations that make it extraordinarily difficult to crush: its democracy, its demography, and its distinct idea of power. 1. The strength of a noisy democracy. For years, people said India's democracy was its weakness. Too chaotic, too divided, too slow. But look around. That same democracy has become India's secret weapon. While authoritarian systems may appear efficient, they often crumble under the weight of one man's mistake. India, by contrast, debates, disagrees, and still moves forward. Its chaos is not a bug, it's a feature. Every 5 years, 900 million citizens participate in what is the world's largest democratic exercise. That legitimacy gives India something no rival can claim: moral authority. 2. The power of its people. Demography is destiny, and India's destiny is young. The median age is just 28. That means hundreds of millions of Indians entering the workforce, innovating, building, coding, dreaming. In 1990, India's biggest export was cotton. Today, it's code. Indian engineers power Silicon Valley. Indian doctors lead global hospitals. Indian entrepreneurs are redefining technology itself. But here's the crucial part: India is no longer just exporting talent, it's keeping it. From Bengaluru to Hyderabad, from Gurugram to Pune, India's tech corridors rival California's in energy and ambition. 3. The rise of a new kind of power. For much of the 20th century, global power was measured in military terms: tanks, missiles, aircraft carriers. But the 21st century rewards something different: resilience, credibility, and connection. India's influence does not come from fear. It comes from trust. Nations across Asia, Africa, and Europe increasingly see India as a reliable partner, not a bully, not a client state, but an independent voice. Its foreign policy is pragmatic. It talks to Washington and Moscow, to Tehran and Tel Aviv. It buys oil from Russia, technology from America, and sells satellites to Africa. That's not contradiction. That's confidence. The uncrushable spirit. There's also something less tangible, yet more powerful: the spirit of Bharat. For thousands of years, India has absorbed invaders, ideas, and influences, and turned them into something uniquely its own. From the Mauryas to the Mughals, from the British Raj to modern democracy, India has never been conquered in spirit. It adapts, it absorbs, it endures. You cannot crush a civilization that thrives on argument, reinvention, and faith in its own destiny. The global moment today, as the world faces fractured alliances, economic uncertainty, and ideological polarization, India represents something rare: stability with purpose. While others retreat into nationalism or isolation, India projects a quieter, steadier confidence. It is building roads in Africa, satellites for the South, vaccines for the world. And perhaps most importantly, it is offering an example that a vast, diverse, democratic nation can rise without losing its soul. Conclusion: so when people ask, can anyone crush Bharat? The answer is simple. You cannot crush an idea that is older than empires and more flexible than power itself. India is not invincible because it's perfect. It's powerful because it keeps moving forward, even when the world doubts it. In an era defined by division, India's greatest strength may be this: it knows how to unite. And that more than missiles, more than money, more than might, is what makes Bharat unbreakable. India's power lies in its balance, a concept both simple and profoundly misunderstood. To understand why India cannot be easily defeated or diminished, one must first understand that India's strength does not come from extremes. It comes from equilibrium between old and new, east and west, power and principle, faith and reason. This balance is not a recent development. It has been woven into India's identity for thousands of years. It is the essence of Bharat, a civilization that has never rejected the world, but instead has learned to live with it, shape it, and adapt to it. When outsiders first encountered India, they often mistook its diversity for disorder, its pluralism for weakness, its democracy for indecision, yet beneath that seeming chaos lies a remarkable harmony, an ability to hold contradictions without falling apart. India can be deeply traditional and fiercely modern at the same time. It can be spiritual and scientific, rooted in its past, but always looking toward the future. That is the quiet genius of this country, its refusal to choose between progress and preservation. Where others build walls, India builds bridges between languages, religions, ideologies, and worlds. The West often measures power through the lens of dominance, military strength, economic control, strategic leverage. India's approach is subtler, more complex. Its power is not about conquest, but coexistence. In a multipolar world where alliances shift and empires fade, India's steady hand is increasingly rare. It speaks with everyone and stands with no one completely. It trades with America, partners with Russia, engages with China, and invests in Africa. It is not non-alignment in the old Cold War sense, but a new kind of strategic balance, a flexible, confident diplomacy that refuses to be defined by others' agendas. This balance extends beyond foreign policy. Domestically, India embodies the coexistence of many Indias. It is at once ancient and young. Its streets echo with centuries of tradition, temple bells, call to prayer, and the chants of sacred hymns, yet its cities hum with the energy of start-ups, digital revolutions, and cutting-edge innovation. The same nation that reveres sages also produces scientists who lead space missions and engineers who design the future. A rickshaw driver in Varanasi might use a smartphone to send payments. A farmer in Punjab checks market prices through an app. This blend of the timeless and the technological defines India's modern renaissance. But balance is not just about diversity, it's about resilience. India's democratic system, messy as it appears, is an extraordinary mechanism for self-correction. Democracies move slowly because they must accommodate millions of voices. In India's case, over 1 billion of them. Yet that slowness is also stability. Authoritarian systems may move faster, but they often break faster too. India's democracy, by contrast, bends but rarely breaks. It absorbs shocks, political, social, economic, and then somehow steadies itself. That elasticity is a form of strength. India's economic story is another example of its balanced rise. In a world chasing extremes, either hyper-capitalism or state control, India's model sits somewhere in between. It blends free markets with social welfare, entrepreneurship with regulation, ambition with inclusion. It encourages innovation, but does not abandon protection for the poor. It welcomes globalization, but guards its sovereignty. This hybrid model is not confusion, it is calibration. India understands that power in the 21st century requires both openness and caution. Even culturally, India's balance stands apart. Its soft power does not come from propaganda or pressure, but from persuasion. Bollywood films, yoga, spirituality, cuisine, and now digital technology. These are India's global ambassadors. They connect people emotionally, not ideologically. And because of that, they last longer than any military alliance ever could. While other nations export ideology, India exports identity, one that invites participation rather than demands obedience. Consider how India approaches religion. It is a deeply spiritual land, yet constitutionally secular. It allows faith to flourish, but not to dominate. Temples stand beside mosques, churches beside gurdwaras. In most places, people of different faiths live not in perfect harmony, but in enduring coexistence. That coexistence is messy, sometimes tense, but it works because India's people have internalized a simple truce. You don't have to agree to live together. That is balance in its purest form. The same balance appears in India's global outlook. It refuses to be a pawn in others' power games. It buys oil from Russia, even as it deepens ties with the United States. It trades with China while strengthening defense cooperation with Japan and Australia. It joins the BRICS and the Quad. To outsiders, this looks contradictory. To India, it's strategy. Because the world is not black and white anymore, and India understands shades better than anyone. This ability to walk between worlds, to engage without submission, gives it an advantage that few others possess. Economically, India's balanced approach has helped it weather global storms. When financial crisis hit the West, India slowed but did not collapse. When supply chains fractured in the pandemic, India turned inward, produced vaccines at scale, and then turned outward again, becoming the pharmacy of the world. Its economy is large enough to sustain internal demand and flexible enough to engage with global trade. This balance between domestic self-reliance and international integration is the reason India continues to grow even when others stagnate. Culturally, India balances pride with pluralism. It celebrates its heritage not to shut out the world, but to contribute to it. The Indian mindset does not see global influence as a threat, it sees it as a conversation. You can find McDonald's in Mumbai, but it serves the Maharaja Mac. You can see Hollywood in India, but Bollywood still thrives. This synthesis of global and local, what some call glocal, is another reflection of the Indian genius for adaptation. Technology, too, shows this duality. India's digital revolution is massive, yet inclusive. The Aadhaar system, the UPI payment network, digital governance, these are not copies of Western models. They are uniquely Indian solutions designed for scale and diversity. They show how India combines high-tech innovation with social accessibility. In Silicon Valley, technology often deepens inequality. In India, it often reduces it. That is balance. Power used not just to advance but to uplift. India's social structure, complex and stratified, is also evolving through this same lens. Urbanization, education, and technology are slowly breaking down barriers that once seemed immovable. Women are entering the workforce in greater numbers. Rural youth are moving into cities and shaping new economies. Social media gives voice to those long unheard. Progress is uneven, but it is happening, and it is happening without violent rupture. Change in India is evolutionary, not revolutionary. That too is balance. Internationally, the world is beginning to see India not as a junior partner or swing state, but as an anchor, a stabilizing force in an unstable era. As global powers polarize, India's measured voice gains importance. It speaks of reform, not rebellion, of partnership, not polarity. It offers a model of growth without aggression, nationalism without isolation, confidence without arrogance. In a world obsessed with dominance, India shows the power of restraint. The symbolism of India's balance runs deep. It is in the architecture of its temples and mosques, where symmetry reflects harmony. It is in its music, where rhythm and improvisation coexist. It is in its philosophy, where the material and the spiritual are seen as complementary, not conflicting. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of action without attachment, the perfect metaphor for a nation that advances without losing itself. This philosophy also defines India's leadership on the global stage. Its diplomacy is not about forcing outcomes, but about building consensus. It believes in dialogue, not dictation. At international forums, India often positions itself as a bridge between North and South, developed and developing, old powers and emerging ones. It listens, it mediates, and it quietly leads. That is why, even as others jostle for dominance, India gains respect. Balance, in the end, is what allows India to handle contradiction without collapse. It can celebrate tradition without rejecting science. It can honor religion without denying reason. It can pursue growth without forsaking justice. This delicate equilibrium does not mean indecision. It means maturity. It reflects a civilization confident enough to hold multiple truths at once. In this century, where extremes are tearing nations apart, from ideological wars to cultural divides, India's example stands as a counterpoint. It shows that power can emerge from patience, influence from integrity, and progress from pluralism. While others oscillate between excess and emptiness, India remains centered, neither too rigid to adapt, nor too fluid to lose form. That equilibrium is not accidental. It is the product of centuries of philosophical thought, social experimentation, and political evolution. It is what allows India to engage with the future without severing its roots. That is why India's rise is sustainable, because it is not driven by one ideology, one leader, or one institution. It is driven by balance between continuity and change, ambition and humility, sovereignty and solidarity. And that balance, once achieved, is almost impossible to destroy. You can't crush what keeps evolving. That single truth explains why India, or Bharat, endures where others falter. Every century brings its conquerors, its empires, its ideologies, yet each one eventually fades into history. India does not. It transforms. It takes the blows of time and turns them into the rhythm of renewal. Its power lies not in permanence, but in adaptability. To understand why no one can truly defeat Bharat, one must see that India's greatest defense has always been its ability to change without losing itself, to evolve without erasing its essence. This pattern is visible across its entire history. Invaders came, Persians, Greeks, Mongols, Mughals, the British, and each believed they would remake the subcontinent in their image. None succeeded. What they built became part of India, absorbed into its vast civilizational bloodstream. The Mughals brought architecture and art that India turned into its own. The British brought law and administration, which India reinterpreted through democracy. India never rejected the foreign, it remade it. It takes the language of its colonizers and turns it into the language of its leaders. It takes the tools of others and fashions them into weapons of self-expression. This is evolution as resilience. India's civilization has endured not by clinging to purity, but by embracing complexity. Every century, every region, every dynasty has added something new: food, music, philosophy, governance, science. There is no single India. There are many Indias existing together, constantly adjusting to each other, constantly negotiating their identities. And yet, through this churn, there remains a thread of continuities, a deep confidence in the idea of Bharat, that civilization is not static, but alive. The ancient Indian texts spoke of the cosmos itself as a cycle: creation, preservation, and dissolution. India's evolution mirrors that same rhythm. It destroys old forms to create new ones, yet the essence remains. That capacity for reinvention is India's quiet power in a turbulent world. Where others see crisis as collapse, India treats them as catalysts. Partition tore the country apart, yet out of that tragedy emerged one of the world's most vibrant democracies. Economic isolation once kept India poor, yet it used that phase to build self-reliance, and when globalization arrived, it leapt forward. Every setback becomes a stage for renewal. Even in times of political conflict or social strain, India's system somehow bends, adjusts, recalibrates. It is a civilization built on the principle that permanence is an illusion and adaptation is the only reality. This adaptability is not just historical, it's deeply cultural. India's people carry an instinct for improvisation. The Hindi phrase, "Jagad," an ingenious, makeshift solution, captures this spirit perfectly. When resources are scarce, Indians innovate. When systems fail, they find a workaround. This isn't mere survival, it's creativity born from constraint. It's why India thrives, even in conditions that might cripple others. Whether in villages or megacities, on factory floors or in tech hubs, the same pattern repeats. When faced with limitation, Indians evolve. They learn, they improvise, they find a way forward. This evolutionary mindset is visible in India's democracy too. Unlike many post-colonial nations, India did not collapse into dictatorship or civil war. It experimented, stumbled, argued, and kept refining. Every election, every protest, every policy debate is part of that evolutionary process. India's democracy does not seek perfection, it seeks persistence. It allows mistakes because it knows correction will come through time. Its constitution, vast and flexible, absorbs new realities, from digital rights to environmental protections, without discarding its core principles. This is not a frozen document, it's a living one. The same principle extends to India's economy. When socialism stalled growth, India liberalized. When globalization exposed inequality, India invested in welfare. When technology disrupted markets, India built digital infrastructure accessible to all. Each phase brought lessons, each adjustment shaped the next. The result is an economy that doesn't follow a single ideology, but evolves through necessity and innovation. In that evolution lies endurance. Because India's economic story isn't about blind adherence to a model. It's about the ability to rewrite the model when circumstances change. Culturally, India's evolution is a miracle of continuity through change. Its languages mutate but never disappear. Its religions reform but never vanish. The Vedas gave way to the Upanishads to the Bhakti movement, and the Bhakti spirit flows today through Bollywood songs and popular culture. Every generation reshapes tradition to speak to its own time. India's festivals, art, and literature constantly reinterpret ancient themes in modern forms. It is why a 3,000-year-old civilization feels contemporary. Evolution gives old symbols new meaning, old rituals new life. India's social structures, long marked by hierarchy, are also transforming through the same slow, unstoppable force. Education, technology, and urbanization are rewriting social mobility. Caste boundaries, while still present, are shifting under the pressure of meritocracy and migration. Women are asserting agency in politics, business, and culture. Voices from the margins are entering the mainstream. These changes are uneven and incomplete, but they are irreversible. They represent a society that may resist change on the surface, but adapts deeply over time. No one can crush a civilization that keeps learning from its own contradictions. In global affairs, this evolutionary instinct translates into flexibility, a quality that makes India impossible to corner. It doesn't cling to rigid alliances or ideologies. It talks to all sides, trades with all powers, and guards its autonomy fiercely. During the Cold War, India refused to align fully with either superpower. In the current multipolar era, it maintains partnerships with rivals and competitors alike. It can conduct military exercises with the United States one week and buy energy from Russia the next. This is not inconsistency, it's adaptation to a complex world. In an age of polarization, India's non-binary approach becomes a strategic strength. Technology has accelerated this evolutionary spirit. India didn't follow the industrial path of the West. It leapfrogged into the digital era. It skipped landlines and went straight to smartphones. It bypassed traditional banking structures and built one of the most advanced digital payment systems on Earth. In rural villages, farmers use satellite data to plan crops. Students in small towns attend global classes online. Government services reach citizens through a single digital identity. These are not small shifts, they are tectonic. India is not merely catching up, it is redefining modernization for a developing world. Even in geopolitics, India's evolution is evident. It has moved from being perceived as a cautious regional player to an assertive voice in global governance. It leads climate discussions, shapes technology ethics, and champions the global south. Yet it does so without threatening others. India's power projection is persuasive rather than coercive. It builds coalitions through trust, not fear. This softer form of influence is itself an evolved response to a changing world where traditional hard power no longer guarantees success. India's cities embody this evolution physically. In Delhi, the ruins of empires stand beside glass towers. In Mumbai, colonial architecture coexists with digital start-ups. Old bazaars function next to e-commerce hubs. The urban landscape itself is a metaphor for how India grows, by layering, not replacing. Progress here doesn't erase the past, it builds upon it. The ancient river of civilization keeps flowing, even as its course shifts with time. That fluidity makes India endlessly renewable. The intellectual and philosophical foundations of India also rest on evolution. Indian thought has always prized inquiry over orthodoxy. The ancient debates of the Upanishads were not dogmatic sermons but dialogues. Questions upon questions, a continuous search for understanding. That same habit of questioning drives India's scientific and technological spirit today. It's why Indian innovators excel globally. They are trained culturally and intellectually to think in multiplicities, to adapt and improvise. The scientific temperament that the world celebrates is deeply rooted in a civilization that has always treated knowledge as a living process. At a societal level, evolution has also shaped India's emotional resilience. Poverty, conflict, natural disasters, these would have broken lesser nations. Yet India continues to rise because its people have learned to rebuild. Hope here is not abstract, it is practical. Every challenge produces a generation that learns how to live differently. That capacity for collective adjustment makes India stronger with every test. It is why calamities that would paralyze others become chapters of renewal in India's story. India's artistic expression tells the same story. Its films, literature, and music constantly reinvent themselves to reflect changing times. Bollywood, once confined to melodrama, now explores global themes. Regional cinema is finding international audiences. Artists mix classical and contemporary forms with ease. This artistic evolution mirrors the broader national journey, self-critical, adaptive, ever-changing. A society that continues to express itself evolves continuously. It cannot be silenced because it keeps finding new languages to speak. In essence, India's evolution is not linear, it's cyclical. Each phase of change loops back to something ancient yet reimagined. Modern yoga, practiced worldwide, traces back to millennia-old traditions but has transformed into a global health movement. Ayurveda, once confined to local practice, now blends with modern medicine. Even India's technology sector carries echoes of its spiritual heritage, a belief that knowledge is universal and should be shared. Evolution here is not rejection of the past but dialogue with it. This perpetual renewal gives India an almost organic resilience. When one system weakens, another grows. When one idea fades, another takes its place. Empires collapse, institutions evolve, generations shift, and India endures because it moves with time, not against it. It is like a great tree that sheds its leaves but keeps its roots. The branches may change shape, the bark may weather, but the life force continues. India's story is not one of resistance in the rigid sense, but of regeneration. You can challenge it, even wound it, but you cannot end it because it does not stay still long enough to be destroyed.